I'm Kristen May. I may look all grown up, but I'm a big kid at heart. I love to make people laugh. And as a comedian, I know that without proper planning, things can go wrong. When it comes to hazards in our community, being ready is even more important. On Hazard, we're going to show you how to make preparing for disaster look so easy, even a big kid can do it. Stay tuned. This is Hazard. The world can be a scary place. Sometimes it seems everywhere you turn, danger lurks. Wow, 2020 is already a great year. When is the Hug a Stranger convention? But we here at Hazard know a danger doesn't need to become a disaster. You see, disasters all have one thing in common. They're predictable. The big giveaway is the hazards that precede them. Hazards may be obvious or obscure, understood or unstable. Every year, in every part of the world, natural hazards form out of some secret combination of elements that humans have not quite cracked. But we do have centuries of history of the destruction they can cause. We don't know how to eliminate these natural hazards, but we can identify them and prepare for the worst case scenario. A disaster can be thought of as a matter of perspective. An isolated thunderstorm might have little community impact, but still strike tragedy for an individual. In 2020, the president named a total of 304 events declared disasters. From the Puerto Rican earthquakes in January to Hurricane Zeta in December, it was quite the year to remember. While over 100 of these events were related to the coronavirus pandemic, the year also saw tornadoes, wildfires, earthquakes, and hurricanes. A declared disaster is a legal term to identify a devastating event that cannot be remedied with state resources alone. If a hazard, like a tropical storm, wreaks so much havoc that additional assistance is needed, a governor or tribal leader can then ask the federal government for help. Not all disasters are the result of natural hazards, but these tend to cause more disruption, cost more money, and lead to greater loss of life overall. And not all disasters of major consequence are declared. Like I said, it's a matter of perspective, and all threats should be carefully identified, evaluated, and planned for. Preparation is a balance of resources and risk, and the first step is knowing what you're up against. So today, we're going to take a closer look at Mother Nature's major perils. Which one should you be worried about? Stick with us. This is Hazard.
So when planning to mitigate against hazards, you can divide them into two categories. There are natural hazards and there are man-made hazards. Natural hazards are things such as hurricanes, flooding, earthquakes, even things such as volcanoes or tsunamis. Man-made hazards, you're looking more at terrorism or a nuclear event or civil unrest. Hazard mitigation is about breaking the cycle of disaster and recovery. Mitigation looks to come in between those two to provide more resilient infrastructure so that the next time a disaster occurs, the damage is not so severe and there isn't as much loss to people and property. Within a hazard mitigation plan, you do a process called a HIRA, or a Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment process. This process allows you to identify what the specific hazards are that are faced within the community and what risk it poses to the populations. From there, you know what you're potentially facing and what resources you need to identify to assist when those hazards occur. We can plan for the hazards, we can predict the hazards, but we can't predict when they're going to occur or how severe they're going to be and what the damage and loss is going to be to the community. All we can do is know what we have at hand and prepare the best we can and mitigate against these hazards before they occur.
Natural disasters are those terrible events resulting from the natural processes of the earth, like the Great San Francisco earthquake of 1906 or the Galveston hurricane of 1900. Natural hazards are meteorological or geophysical events that cause disasters: hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, blizzards, and others. Because we know hazards are likely to happen under certain circumstances, we can recognize the danger they pose. Very often, the hazards are not isolated. One land or wind incident can cause a chain reaction of other disastrous events. So how do you know which worst-case scenario you need to prepare for? Among the factors you should consider are where you live, what you live in, and your ability to evacuate. What might keep you up at night, though, is the thought of dealing with one of these hazards. Thankfully, hazard scientists have been working on just the tool for that. Introducing the exclusively intuitive and unscientific threatometer. But first, a word from our legal department.
The threatometer does not measure, predict, assume, or understand any hazard, natural or otherwise. The results expressed by the threatometer do not necessarily reflect the views of hazard, its officials, cast members, entities, extended family members, or subsidiaries, and do not constitute legal, professional, medical, or geologic advice. Hazard makes no guarantee of the validity of its rankings. Use at your own risk.
Now that we've got that out of the way, let's dive into volcanoes. Miles below the ground, molten rock continually seeks passage to the surface of the earth. Volcanoes form when this magma erupts through vents in the earth's crust. Volcanic eruptions can be explosive or quiet. Eruptions can cause dangerous ashfall, as well as mud flows, landslides, and fires. Explosive eruptions can have far-reaching effects. Approximately 200 active volcanoes exist in the United States. There are thousands more, but they are dormant or extinct, including a large amount at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Real-time monitoring techniques give us warning of where volcanoes might erupt and what problems they could cause. But the force and timing of any particular eruption is generally unknown. The United States experiences only a small handful of eruptions annually, and these mostly happen in Alaska and Hawaii. Death attributed to volcanoes are much lower relative to other disasters in the US. Though, over the course of history and around the world, thousands have died in the aftermath of eruptions. Since 1980, volcanic eruptions on American soil have cost millions of dollars in lost property, forest, and damage to the agricultural and aviation industries. No doubt, volcanoes in the US are dangerous and have caused a great deal of destruction. But eruptions are somewhat predictable, and we have a good understanding of where the threat exists. Even as a kid playing games, I knew to avoid the floor when it was lava. And it's probably good advice to stay away even now. Our threatometer ranks this hazard a 6. Large plates of rock under the Earth's crust constantly move, with the edges of each plate rubbing together. When these edges or faults slip, it triggers a release of energy that causes the land to shake. Earthquakes are the sudden, rapid shaking of the ground caused by the breaking and shifting of rock beneath the Earth's surface. Underwater earthquakes can cause a massive displacement of water, which can result in destructive tsunamis, like those most often seen in the Pacific Ocean. Earthquakes can be felt hundreds or even thousands of miles from the epicenter. The epicenter is the point on the Earth's surface that sits above the focus of an earthquake. They can occur anywhere, and in fact, happen every day, though many are too small to notice. Certain areas, though, show the same general seismic patterns year after year. The United States sees the most earthquakes in Alaska, followed by California, then Hawaii. Many of these occur in sparsely populated areas. Over the last 4 decades, U.S. earthquakes have killed approximately 140 people and cost citizens billions of dollars. In the eastern U.S., the faults are harder to map, but historic disasters like the devastating Charleston earthquake of 1886 underscore the importance of planning for this hazard. In fact, South Carolina is one of the most seismically active states east of the Mississippi, with the most activity taking place in the Charleston-Summerville area. The idea that the ground below our feet could rumble and quake at any given moment leaves me a little shaky, but events in recent decades have had minimal to moderate impact on people. Scientists warn not to be complacent about these hazards though, because there is still so much we don't know about earthquakes. We rate earthquakes an 8 on the threadometer. In the last of our geophysical hazards, we look at landslides and the threat they pose in the United States. A landslide occurs when rock and soil move downward, usually down a slope or off a cliff. Often, landslides occur after intense rain or snowmelt, especially after recent wildfire. Other causes include earthquakes, eruptions, stream erosion, and human activity. Landslides occur in every state in our country, with the most severe instances happening in mountain ranges. The United States Geological Survey, or USGS, estimates that landslides cause more than $1 billion worth of damage and 25 to 50 deaths in America each year. Most are the result of rockfalls, debris flow, or volcanic lahars. Landslide disasters can largely be prevented by regulating construction and land use in areas that are vulnerable, as well as using modern geologic investigations. Still, many devastating events can occur with little to no warning. Landslide, good song, but a bunch of rocks suddenly sliding downhill, not so awesome. In truth, landslides do pose a serious threat and are often part of the aftermath of other large-scale disasters. Landslides get a 7 on the threadometer. Advancements in geophysics, or the science of Earth's natural properties, has changed the way we think about where to live, how to build, and when to react to potential threats. Still, a better understanding of what is happening below ground will need to be achieved before we can truly predict the timing and magnitude of these types of hazards. Next, we'll turn our eyes upward and examine weather-related natural hazards, including the monster of Mother Nature. Stick with us. This is Hazard. Hydrologic and atmospheric natural hazards are those that are driven by water, climate, and weather-related processes. These are some of the scariest our country must face. First up, a blustery event whose favorite place to hang is America's heartland. A tornado is a violent rotating column that extends from the bottom of a thundercloud toward the ground. Tornadoes occur all over the world, but the U.S. sees more than anywhere else, around 1,200 each year. We do not know exactly what conditions lead to tornadoes, but many form from supercell thunderstorms, and sometimes from tropical storms and hurricanes. Some have lasted as long as an hour, but most last less than 10 minutes. Tornadoes kill dozens of people each year in the States, mostly as a result of flying debris. And on average, they cause about $400 million worth of damage. Meteorologists cannot predict when a tornado will occur, but can forecast conditions that sometimes precede them. Like many natural hazards, exactly when and how strong the impact might be remain elusive. Real-time monitoring of tornado formation can give people in the vicinity only a short time to get to safety. Radar can track local disturbances, while other alert systems are reliant on a network of citizen sky watchers who report what they see. In the aftermath of a tornado, the path of destruction is evident and distressing, but most often that path is fairly narrow. Areas prone to tornadoes often have safety shelters easily accessed if danger is present. but a tornado can happen anywhere at any time. We rate this hazard a 9 on our threadometer. The only hazard big and bad enough to justify a proper name is the hurricane. Tropical storms are low-pressure systems that form over warm ocean waters during the warm months of the year. A tropical storm becomes a hurricane once winds reach 74 miles per hour. A major hurricane can have wind gusts up to 200 miles per hour. Unlike tornadoes, hurricanes can be hundreds of miles wide, travel thousands of miles, and last for days, not minutes. Hurricane-force winds are only part of the threat that these massive storms bring. People at risk must also consider the effects of inland flooding, storm surge, tornadoes, and lightning. Thousands have died as a result of hurricanes and tropical storms in the last 2 decades. Water, not wind, is the biggest threat. In fact, hurricanes cause more damage and loss of life than any other single disaster event in the United States. Hurricanes are easy to see, and track forecasts are accurate within 72 hours. The size and strength at landfall, however, is hard to guess. If you want to know more about these storms, check out my hazard episode on hurricane preparedness. Typically, only the southeastern Gulf Coast are under threat of these cyclones, and they do not hit land every year. But the sheer size and potential destruction earns this hazard a 10 on the threadometer. Wildfires are natural hazards that can actually be caused by humans. The National Park Service says more than 80% are started from campfires, discarded cigarettes, equipment, and arson. Wildfires can also ignite from lightning or lava. Overgrown underbrush, extreme temperatures, high winds, and drought can set the stage for wildfires to grow quickly out of control. Watches and warnings can be given if atmospheric conditions are primed for a fire, but the blaze can spread rapidly. Millions of homes are in the line of fire, especially those that exist in what's called the wildland-urban interface, a transition zone between unoccupied land and urban development. The U.S. Fire Administration says that 70,000 communities in the WUI are at risk for fires. Wildfires can cost Americans billions in lost property and agriculture. The American West sees the most instances of wildfire, but the South and Southeastern coast have significant threat as well. Deaths usually amount to less than 20 per year. The thought of burning alive is absolutely terrifying, but the risk to life is less than that of many other hazards. We rank this a 6.5 on the threadometer. Drought is a prolonged period of abnormally low rainfall that leads to a shortage of water. Extended periods of above normal temperatures can make droughts worse because the extreme heat causes drier conditions. In the same way, drought can make hot weather feel more severe because there is less cooling moisture in the air. Surprisingly, drought can often be more costly than other natural disasters, while extreme heat can lead to more deaths cumulatively than many other single hazard events. Extremely dry conditions can set the stage for intense wildfires and dust storms. Costs are generally related to lost crops and the negative impacts on plants and animals. Prolonged exposure to high temperatures can cause deadly heat stroke and make other medical conditions worse. Deaths caused by drought or heat exposure are generally thought of as preventable, but still hundreds die every year of complications related to these hazards. As with most disasters, the poor and elderly are the most vulnerable. Thankfully, there are many strategies that drought-prone areas can implement to lessen risks related to drought. People can protect themselves from heat exposure by staying hydrated and limiting strenuous outdoor activities. Drought and heat are hazards to watch out for, but come on guys, you gotta drink your water. They get a combined rating of 6 on our threadometer. Thunderstorms and winter storms can cause many other hazards, including lightning, tornadoes, hail, flash flooding, high winds, sleet, and ice. No place in the United States or the world is safe from severe weather. Destructive winds from thunderstorms can be detrimental and occur much more often than tornadoes. The damage from severe storms, when added together, cost Americans more money and loss of life than that of any other natural disasters, except for hurricanes. Most fatalities from winter and severe storms are the result of automobile accidents. Doppler radar and atmospheric monitoring can help to forecast when severe storms might occur. So it is important to heed warnings and stay inside under threat of these events. Severe storms happen every day, which is why they don't always make the headline news. No matter where you live, they're just a part of life. But their frequency makes them a hazard worth your attention. We rate this a 7.5. Measuring the danger of these threats with our threatometer, admittedly, may not be the best way to prevent disaster. There are just too many factors that influence the outcomes. Luckily, emergency managers put a little more thought into hazard mitigation. But still, I wonder, if tornadoes, earthquakes, blizzards, and the rest were matched up in the arena, which would prevail?
Welcome to the Disasters Tournament at Augusta. What a beautiful day.
But we do have disasters, natural disasters that is, Mother Nature's gift to let us know who's boss and force us to work together during times of need. Okay, here comes a tornado getting ready to tee off. You gotta wonder if the pressure is getting to her. I mean, the barometric pressure is dropping, but is it getting to her? I believe that's the question on everybody's mind.
Well, you can never underestimate her. She tore through this golf course last year.
Ooh, right into the sand trap, and spoke too soon. The entire sand trap is now being lifted away. Looks like she's gonna still finish under par. Oh, they're calling for quiet on the course. That means earthquake is probably about to tee off. Ooh, wonderful hit. And earthquake has opened a crevasse in the middle of the course and the ball's gone in. Looking to the judges, yes, they're calling that a hole-in-one. That'll finish very well.
Remember, Earthquake won last year, and we're still feeling the aftershocks from that victory.
Oh, here comes Volcano. Volcano doesn't play very often and usually is known for being very slow. There he goes.
Oh boy, Volcano is on fire today.
With that, the entire sand trap has turned to glass.
You know, hats off to this Augusta golf course team. They were prepared for this event so they could prevent any injuries, and one of these disasters is going to prevail today with a beautiful trophy.
From the flaming fields of Augusta, we'll be right back.
As you may have figured out, comparing natural hazards is a bit like comparing apples to oranges. They both inspire the same feeling, but taste completely different. The hazards we have outlined all have the potential to cause significant problems for states, cities, communities, and families. It is important for each of these groups to balance actual risk with resources to best mitigate these dangers. In government, this action is summed up in the community's hazard mitigation plan. FEMA requires states, tribal, and local governments to maintain current hazard mitigation plans to receive certain types of disaster assistance. The goal of a hazard mitigation plan is to serve as a template for action before, during, and after a hazardous event. The plan is based on past experiences and known vulnerabilities of an area. An effective plan will focus on the lowest tier of local government so that each considers that area's unique risk.
So hazard mitigation planning, just like any other planning effort within emergency management, is never done. All of our local governments, all of our communities are constantly looking at these plans and how they can be better for the next event. So we can determine vulnerability by going back to the process we previously discussed of the hazard identification and risk assessment, and learning not only from these historic events, but from the intersection between these two things, where the hazards occur and where the people and their possessions are. That's where the most risk lies, and that's why they're determined to be vulnerable. So it is very important for mitigation plans to be complementary of one another between neighboring counties, neighboring regions, or if you're looking at municipalities, the cities that surround them. So within South Carolina, and especially within Charleston County, there's a great deal of cooperation between local governments, between counties and their activities with the state agencies. This cooperation leads to more effective planning efforts and a more comprehensive plan that covers the entire population of the state and of Charleston County. A local hazard mitigation plan isn't just another government document. It's a whole community effort. The plan will consider things such as the school districts, the water districts, hospitals, and fire departments. Public participation is invited because this document is for you. This document is meant to protect you, your family, and your belongings. Particularly within Charleston County, there's a great deal of public support and public participation in the hazard mitigation planning effort that isn't seen elsewhere. And that leads to a plan that really benefits the people and benefits the communities specifically where it's needed.
A mitigation plan is not a set it and forget it kind of document. It must be continuously monitored, evaluated, and updated. By focusing on smaller jurisdictions, a more specific risk assessment can be formed based on the unique hazards for that area. Implementing a mitigation plan will likely come with a price tag, so action steps should be supported with existing or attainable resources. Most find, however, the proactive and thoughtful approach can prove to be a great return on investment for communities through the saving of lives and property. Any hazard has the potential to turn into tragedy. It is important for individuals and communities to understand their risks and make a value judgment on what's worth protecting and to what extent. Being prepared means planning for the worst case scenario, but always hoping for the best. Thanks for watching. This is Hazard. Introducing the exclusively intuitive and unscientific threadometer! Yeah! Unscientific. If you want to know more about hurricanes, check out my episode. Okay, just felt like I needed to sing that. You took my love and you took it down. Climb a mountain and I turn around. Okay.